Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avilon is definitely one of the biggest surprises of 2025, and it's a game Bethesda should learn from. In short, it's simply a better Skyrim, only with darker fantasy aesthetic. And I'm not just saying that because both games have the same lockpicking minigame. The entire game structure is like Skyrim, but cooler. Even the main menu is badass. Let alone the rest of the game. In Skyrim we start with an unskippable cutscene that drags on forever, and then we have to follow an NPC through an ultra-linear and scripted dungeon that we can't explore at all. And even if we try to do something different than developers intended, our companions will stand still in a place and repeat the same dialogue every 5 seconds until we do what he says. In Tainted Grail we also start as prisoners in dungeon on Prison Island. However, once we are freed, we are not led by the hand at all. After leaving the dungeon, the entire island is open to us for exploration. And it's quite a large area filled with various secrets, weapons, enemies and even 2 optional boss fights. And this is just the prologue. After escaping the island, the entire world opens up to us and it's divided into 3 distinct areas which we unlocked as we progress through the main storyline. This doesn't change the fact that we can go whenever we want and do whatever we want from the very beginning of the game. And exploration in this game is great and rewarding. Unlike Skyrim, where most locations and dungeons were designed based on a copy-paste approach, in this game each location is unique and some even have unique enemies. And instead of the puzzles in Skyrim dungeons, which even 6-year-old could easily solve, the developers on this game decide to offer us a different challenge this time, which is clunky platforming sections. Yay! At least they tried something different than usual. Additionally, we can find various hidden items around every corner. Often while exploring we can stumble upon some of the best weapons in the game, simply hidden in the crypt or behind a rock, which greatly rewards exploring every corner of the map. However, exploring the map is not an easy task, due to the fact that practically every place on this land is swarmed with bandits, knights, animals, beasts, ghosts, monsters, and even angry villagers who are ready to kill us just because they didn't like how we look at them. In such cases, we will have to resort to using non-violent tools in form of various blades, spears, axes, hammers, bows and magics, devs didn't like crossbows for some reason, to peacefully remove our enemies from existence. However, this won't be an easy task, as the villagers may not be particularly intelligent, but they can still punch you in the face pretty hard. And the same also applies to the less dangerous enemies. Each one has its own unique attacks, skills and fighting styles, requiring a specific strategy to defeat each opponent. The combat system itself is also quite complex. Each weapon and spells have light and heavy attacks. Additionally, enemies' attacks can be dodged, which costs stamina points, or parried, which doesn't cost anything but requires precision. This allows us to fight enemies in more than one way. Also, the sound in this game is excellent, which makes the combat feels very brutal. It's a shame that there is no gore elements, as this game begs for them. You can have everything, I guess. Unfortunately, fighting enemies isn't that easy, as our character is so weak at the beginning that even fighting a common monster can result in death, not to mention more advanced enemies like angry villagers. Therefore, we need to focus on leveling up so that our character can actually do anything. The progression system in this game is truly extensive. Each level grants you 1 attribute point, which not only increases your stats but also influences which weapons you can use effectively, which armor type will be more beneficial to you, and even unlocks new dialogues option when you're talking to NPCs. We also get a perk that can be used in one of many skill trees, which allow us to develop our character in a lot of different ways. This way we can quickly transform from a guy who can barely lift a sword and dies from a fart in his direction into a complete badass who one-shots every living or not living creature, and even the most terrifying enemies, such as desperate peasants, are not much for us. Okay, but to create the most broken character who can one-shot all the bosses in the game, we need experience. Fortunately, this isn't a problem because we get it for literally everything we do. Cooking, crafting, fishing, exploration, combat and so on. But of course the most experience comes from quests, which are really interesting not only compared to Skyrim, because it's a pretty low bar, but also to other RPGs. Most of them offer a variety of paths to complete them, and a lot of them have a surprising plot twist which makes them more interesting and less predictable. And the main storyline is interesting and engaging enough to make you want to continue playing the game, but in the same time it's not so intrusive that distracts you from the exploration and side quest. This is the complete opposite of what Bethesda has given us in Skyrim, and I think even the biggest Bethesda fanboy will agree with me on that point. They even have their own version of Argonian made, and not only that, but there's a whole quest tied to those books that's also hilarious. Additionally, all the locations in the game are truly unique and maintaining the same dark fantasy aesthetic. In fact, some of them look like they were taken straight out of the horror game, but they are fit very well to this world, which is a huge plus. The developers did a great job of maintaining the same style throughout the entire game. Every location, armor, weapons and even music have a dark fantasy feeling, ensuring that nothing breaks the immersion of the world. The game also features an interesting night system, during which all enemies become stronger and new, more powerful enemies appear that gives you a more rare loot after defeating them. And when night appears, the soundtrack changes to a truly terrifying one. Of course, not everything is perfect in this game, and the most apparent problem are the bugs. This is where these both games are unfortunately very similar. Stretched textures, physics glitches, and voice acting errors are commonplace. But unlike Bethesda, fortunately these developers are constantly making patches and not relying on modders to fix their game. Also, the voice acting isn't very consistent and the dialogues are sometimes unnecessarily long, but they can be skipped. But the biggest disappointment of this game is that most of the characters aren't particularly interesting. Definitely the most developed and well written character is King Arthur, who accompanies us and comments on the various of events we participate in. But beyond that, there aren't many interesting characters. They usually play their role in only one quest, and after that we basically never interact with them again, which is a bit disappointing. What's also disappointing is that crafting is very poor, at least when it comes to weapons and armor. There are quite a few recipes for food and potions, but not so much for armor, and for some reason we almost can't craft weapons at all. Fortunately, developers are still updating this game. They are not only fixing bugs but also adding new content. The game recently got its first DLC, so even if there are some gaps now, they may disappear in the near future if the game continues to be supported. I give Tainted Grail the Fall of Avilon an 8 out of 10. This game is what Evolved should have been, and is definitely my game of the year for 2025. Finally, Bethesda has some competition, and that's a good thing. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.